Charlotte Madison never apologized. She judged everyone on those busy New York streets purely by outward appearances. Until her pristine Bentley rear-ended a battered old coupe driven by a quiet single dad named Mason Carter. She stepped out without missing a beat, her checkbook already waiting. Ready to throw cash at the problem, assuming his quiet, cheap car meant a quick payoff. But when Mason opened the trunk of that seemingly ancient Aston Martin DB5, Charlotte froze solid. She didn't find a spare tire or some dusty ordinary luggage. Instead, she stared down at hidden radar arrays and glowing biometric locks. Encrypted screens and advanced high-tech defense systems stopped her right in her tracks. You and I are about to learn a lesson. What this quiet man hides will completely shatter your assumptions. That morning began like every other day for the incredibly wealthy Charlotte Madison. Everything ran flawlessly, efficiently, and strictly by her very own rules. Her entire schedule for that October Tuesday was locked down 3 weeks ahead of time. A 9 o'clock legal review, then a 10:30 walk of the demo floor, followed by a noon ceremony to sign a massive contract worth $1.4 billion with 3 of the biggest car companies around. Charlotte controlled Meridian Dynamics with absolute authority. It was one of the nation's most relentless and innovative self-driving car companies. She built one single ambitious patent into a massive corporate empire in under 9 years. At 37, she was sharp as a knife and completely intolerant of anyone wasting her time. Absolutely nothing on the surface hinted that anything would go wrong. Her personal driver, a quiet man named Gerald, had served her faithfully for 6 years. He steered the Bentley through Midtown until a delivery truck drifted across 48th Street without a signal. Gerald swerved hard to avoid the collision that sent the Bentley sweeping right into the driver's side of a pearl gray Aston Martin DB5, sitting quietly along the curb. The impact made a harsh, ugly shriek of metal grinding against metal. It turned heads on the New York sidewalk, catching the eye of folks who normally just look away. Charlotte felt a sudden jolt in her spine before her brain could even process the accident. Gerald started apologizing immediately, but Charlotte was already unbuckling her seatbelt. She stepped from the Bentley, projecting the polished, practiced calm of a seasoned corporate leader. Looking purely at the surface, she assumed this little problem would be easily fixed. The beat-up Aston Martin showed deep dents along its side door and rear quarter panel. To her quick, judging eyes, the car looked like complete trash. Its pearl gray paint had faded away into a dull, powdery chalk. The chrome trim resembled dirty old coins, and the window seals were rotting away at the edges. You and I might see only junkyard scrap, just as she arrogantly did, missing what lay beneath. She quickly snatched a business card from the pocket of her expensive blazer, already placing a cheap dollar value on the quiet man. She assumed his worth was low, market value plus 20%, maybe a voucher to keep him quiet. Then Mason Carter walked slowly down the steps of a nearby brownstone. His young daughter, maybe 8 or 9 years old, followed closely beside him, carrying a heavy school backpack. He looked remarkably ordinary, tall, totally unhurried, wearing a faded canvas jacket and a plain shirt. He seemed like an invisible guy, living quietly without drawing any real attention to himself. He checked the crushed DB5 without showing any anger and with absolutely no sign of panic. Instead, his quiet, knowing eyes were calculating everything. You and I know appearances lie. Beneath his calm lay deep secrets. He gently asked his daughter to wait on the steps. She obeyed without a fuss. Charlotte misread his quiet authority as nothing more than simple parenting skills. She introduced herself, handing him her sleek business card. She spoke in that brisk, dismissive tone used for vendors, promising to easily cover the car repairs and any minor hassle. She offered cash, ignoring the quiet strength of this unassuming man. He slowly circled the damaged classic car, inspecting the heavy dent near the door. He pressed his thumb against the ruined metal, checking for something deeply hidden. Standing up, he quietly said he needed to check the old car's internal systems first. Charlotte casually agreed, foolishly assuming he just meant an old engine or flat tire. Checking her watch, she figured she had 47 minutes before her big meeting. What he did next was shocking. It completely shattered every arrogant assumption this executive had just made. He reached through the open window, tapping a plain spot on the dashboard that looked like cheap decorative trim to outsiders. Just a basic strip of brushed metal sitting right above the glove box. He entered a highly specific code. 3 quick taps, then a long press, and the ordinary old interior completely transformed. A secret blue light flickered beneath the dusty dashboard. The basic rearview mirror split along an invisible seam, revealing a high-tech digital display inside. A deep, powerful hum stirred beneath the rusty chassis. Steady and focused, the battered machine came alive. Charlotte stood frozen on the sidewalk. Her assumptions about this quiet man and his old car vanished in 4 seconds of overwhelming shock. The secret system running inside. That battered old car was now executing an advanced diagnostic. Charlotte watched the secret screen in disbelief as it scanned the rusty frame for damage, verifying connection strength across heavily guarded, encrypted channels, making absolutely sure no one had planted secret tracking bugs during their minor street crash. Think about it. She recognized the structure, if not the specific hardware code. But the core philosophy, the deep, layered approach to hidden vehicle defense, turned this cheap junker into an incredibly valuable asset and military intelligence hub. She had actually seen something nearly identical to this once before, locked inside her secure server room in a top-secret prototype file that quietly vanished 8 months ago. Normally, the wealthy executive never rattled easily. She had survived hostile takeovers and aggressive federal investigations. Even a massive product failure that cost a major government contract and almost ruined her tech empire. She had walked away from every single disaster feeling colder, much sharper, trusting only her money and power to control everything. Yet standing on 48th Street, watching this dusty classic car suddenly activate top-tier security protocols she never thought existed outside a highly classified development lab. You and I know this feeling, the sudden terror of realizing you are hopelessly outmatched. She asked this seemingly ordinary man exactly where he got it. Her voice stayed professional, but carried an edge showing she knew he was no ordinary citizen. Mason calmly closed the rusted car door, studying the wealthy executive for a long moment before answering. He played the part of an ordinary man, claiming that worn-out car was just some abandoned hobby. Guarding his quiet life, he shrugged it off as completely unrelated to the horrific crash. But Charlotte saw through the silence. She knew it mattered, and he did not argue. Instead, he softly warned that some heavy histories are best left buried, but if she truly wanted to hunt down a corporation's hidden flaws, she needed to start looking right in her own backyard. Those quiet words struck deep, like the heavy click of a lock sealing away a massive truth. She searched his quiet, unremarkable face. There was no hatred there. No prideful games, no attempts to extort a wealthy executive. He spoke with the quiet weight of a physician delivering a diagnosis. Drama cannot change the facts. She demanded a name for this mysterious stranger. He calmly replied that he was Mason Carter. She threatened that her powerful corporate investigators would tear his quiet life apart, digging deep. He only smiled, knowing they would find a blank slate, and he was absolutely correct. Safe inside her expensive vehicle, she received the dossier. His history was so completely empty it felt like a silent warning. Mason Carter, age 42, officially just a simple mechanical and systems engineer. No grand executive titles. Just a single vehicle shielding patent from 11 years ago. After that, absolute silence. His paper trail ended abruptly, no active licenses, no visible career. No public profile, no professional whispers. But you and I recognized the signs. He was invisible because he worked tirelessly to hide his existence. Charlotte saw the mask. She knew quiet lives always hide the heaviest burdens, either dark regrets or people desperate to escape a threat. She immediately ordered her driver to turn the massive car around. Back there, Mason stood by his worn vehicle, scanning it with a peculiar device she had never seen before, gently gliding the instrument along the bottom seam of the steel. On the stairs, his daughter sat quietly, appearing completely oblivious while focused on a screen. Stepping down, Charlotte finally let her powerful executive mask slip. She told this quiet father he deserved a genuine conversation, not some cheap payoff to keep him silent. He stood tall, studying her with a calm gaze that carried no fear or anger. Then he softly revealed that her perfect high-end vehicle held a very dark secret of its own. He walked calmly toward the polished hood of her expensive car. Without a word, he knelt low by the front driver's side wheel well. Reaching deep inside the frame, he retrieved a tiny hidden object between his fingers. A miniature device no larger than a standard coat button. Dull black, featuring one microscopic contact point, he held it up for her. With her legal training and years in the technology sector, she understood instantly. No one needed to explain the true purpose of this harmless plastic speck. It was an active tracking and surveillance device, quietly feeding her movements to someone. This is where the true gravity reveals itself. He silently turned it over. 3 small letters were carved into the casing, displaying a logo she knew all too well. It was the classified mark belonging solely to her own company's procurement team. This massive betrayal had been manufactured inside her very own secure company. She stood frozen on the bright street, her mind working rapidly to accept this terrifying truth, analyzing the situation with the quiet, cold logic she reserved for major threats. But beneath her powerful composure, a silent, heavy terror was beginning to surface. Whoever planted that quiet little device possessed the key to her entire empire. Beneath the surface, someone knew her route, tracking the chief executive's daily movements for days, maybe even weeks. We both know appearances deceive. This minor traffic collision was no accident at all. The delivery truck that swerved into her lane was already gone, fading back into the crowded city streets. She noticed that detail at first, but quickly brushed it off. She certainly was not ignoring it now. The quiet single father slid the microchip into a sealed bag, just like they use for digital evidence. This unassuming man had come fully prepared for this exact scenario. The wealthy executive finally saw past his cheap clothes, completely shattering everything she assumed in their first 3 minutes. Regardless of his look, Mason Carter was no helpless victim, nor was he some relic. Before her stood a man who had been quietly watching and waiting. He remained miles ahead of the dark corporate trap she was only beginning to piece together. They sat inside his worn Aston Martin while the oblivious city passed them by, blind to the truth. The interior was not built to show off. It was as clean as a lab because real precision demands order. The classic vintage leather looked weathered, but it was completely solid. The analog dashboard gauges were period correct and completely authentic. Yet tucked deep behind the glove box, beneath the armrest and inside the doors, lay high-tech systems that had absolutely no business inside a 60-year-old classic. Tiny hidden cameras and a biometric lock wired directly into the starter. A powerful electromagnetic defense shield lay forged beneath those rusty metal panels, plus a hidden signal blocker that Mason calmly called a counterintelligence defense array. The chief executive softly asked him who actually paid for this gear. We can finally see the truth. He spent 7 years building this alone, buying rare parts on black markets. But the backstory he offered was only a small piece of the truth. He spoke with deep caution, sharing only what was absolutely necessary, like a guarded soul keeping a stranger at the door, but it painted a clear picture. 12 years ago, this quiet, unassuming man was the elite systems engineer directing a classified vehicle defense program for a wealthy private security firm. That top-secret project was in its final stages of development when a trusted partner betrayed the entire operation. A close colleague sold the primary technology blueprints to a wealthy, ruthless corporate competitor. The dark fallout was far worse than mere corporate espionage. It was lethal. A high-speed test drive was brutally rigged, leaving 2 of his brilliant engineers dead. The official inquiry was deliberately rigged to uncover absolutely nothing. The truth was buried under heavy non-disclosure agreements. The investors killed the project and quietly paid off the families to buy their silence. Mason was fully cleared, but proving his innocence meant watching his life's work get completely wiped out. So he abandoned that high-paying world, took his 2-year-old daughter, and faded into a quiet, ordinary life. His young wife passed away too. 8 months after the betrayal, taken in what Mason quietly called a routine traffic accident. But the cold look in his eyes proved he never believed her sudden death was just bad luck. He had not rebuilt that weathered old machine to seek attention, nor to get revenge. It was his quiet ultimate insurance policy. A moving fortress built just in case the powerful criminals who destroyed his past ever returned. It gave this seemingly ordinary man the hidden power to record, track, and protect his family, Charlotte listened in absolute silence. Together we see it. She silently recorded every technical detail, the timeline, and the names he left unspoken. You and I know quiet lives hide the deepest secrets. Seeing that faded dashboard glow changed everything, turning Charlotte's mild worry into absolute shock. In an instant, she was questioning her entire year, shattering the polished corporate illusions she had clung to. As founder of Meridian, she believed she ruled the tech world. Then this dusty old DB5 flagged a fresh threat mid-conversation. The quiet father watched the screen like a doctor tracking a fading heartbeat. A silent, invisible digital strike had just hit the heavily fortified Meridian servers less than 40 minutes ago. The breach was surgically quiet, invisible, masked as routine maintenance to easily bypass her million-dollar defense systems. Her brilliant security experts saw nothing, yet this ancient car caught it. With a quiet tap, he projected the hidden attack trace onto the mirror, revealing the masked data packets, odd timing patterns, and the clever bypass. Charlotte instantly recognized this buried flaw. Her expensive developers had requested a critical patch 7 months ago, but her arrogant corporate board members had swept it aside, buried deep under endless bureaucratic paperwork. Yet buried in the glowing logs of this old DB5 was a distinct tag. It belonged to no living person, just a lingering digital ghost. A phantom identity stitched together using actual employee directory profiles. But the intruder left a quiet fingerprint, and this old car matched it to a dark shadow from Mason's past. He spoke the name. With a quiet, steady voice as if reading the weather, Jason Hunter. Charlotte knew the name well. The entire automotive industry worshipped him. He was the visionary behind Helios Intelligence, a loud rival who spent 3 years quietly stealing and copying their work, snatching her patents with suspicious rival filings submitted just days later. Clueless executives simply dismissed it as parallel innovation, a mere coincidence when brilliant minds chase the very same goals. Once, Charlotte found it only slightly irritating. But you and I can see the deeper, uglier truth unfolding here. She demanded to know how this billionaire connected to Mason's hidden past, the old sabotage, and the fire. The quiet father retreated into a heavy, deep silence. He muttered that Hunter was never on the main development team, only a shadow consultant using quiet access to compromise the supply chains. An insignificant bystander who gathered enough secrets to become deadly, hiding behind a respectable corporate mask for years. Mason admitted he had carried suspicions about this industry darling. But accusations without proof are dangerous, a lesson he had learned to endure quietly. Now this rusted car finally delivered the cold hard proof. Powerful leaders like Charlotte never reached out to the quiet, ordinary world. It was never simple arrogance that made her cold. It was armor forged from knowing how quickly wolves devour leaders who show weakness behind expensive desks, showing any hint of human doubt to predatory boardrooms. What do we learn? In a loud, glossy world, real power remains quiet. The realization finally hit him, and everything else followed. He had built his CEO reputation on looking like he had every answer, even when he was just winging it in real time. The thought of him sitting inside. Let's picture this, a desperate executive in my old car, begging a stranger for help. Trusting me to save his company from a hidden threat was, by his corporate standards, completely insane. An unacceptable risk, but he took the leap anyway. He looked right at me and asked for my help. He spoke plainly. No corporate spin or clever framing to make a desperate plea sound like an exciting partnership. I just listened in silence, refusing to say yes immediately. And I did not fake hesitation just to squeeze him. I stared through my dusty windshield at the streets, watching New York move in its usual rush. Cold, loud, and indifferent. Then I gave him my 2 demands. First, my daughter stays out of it completely, never mentioned, and kept far away from the chaos about to explode. The second rule was that he followed my lead without any corporate debating when seconds mattered. I knew giving up control was painful for him, but he did not argue. We spent an hour inside my old DB5 sorting the data my hidden system gathered. The truth we found was incredibly sharp and honestly painfully obvious in hindsight, which is exactly how a masterclass corporate heist works. Jason Hunter was doing more than stealing tech. Stick with me, he was laying a trap. His noon signing ceremony was designed to be the slaughterhouse. set right during the live demonstration. The moment his engineers would showcase their autonomous software tackling a brutal Manhattan route, Hunter was ready to deploy a corrupted version of their software that his team spent months building from stolen blueprints. This malicious code would not just quietly crash. It would glitch violently, causing dangerous and unpredictable maneuvers, making it look like his own self-driving system was making fatal, catastrophic errors on live camera. The major investors who, ready to sign a $1.4 billion contract, would watch his cars swerve wildly, accelerate out of control, ignoring every safety backup. Their corporate lawyers would tell them to walk instantly. Federal regulators, tipped off by Hunter, would immediately launch massive safety investigations. His tech company would never survive that brutal fallout. Hunter framed it beautifully. From the outside, it just looked like sloppy, rushed engineering. Exactly the narrative his loudest critics had been preaching for months, now backed up by fabricated digital evidence and a public disaster to lock the trap shut. He just slumped back in my worn seat, feeling the sudden, crushing realization of how close he came to ruin out of sheer arrogance. He looked right over at me. I was sorting code on a cracked screen, working with the calm of someone who lived in the dark. We often forget this. The people holding the biggest secrets do not wear shiny suits. They never perform. I was not trying to impress him. I did not need a trophy to prove my worth. You and I know that true worth rarely flashes. Mason faced the threat like a man who had paid the ultimate price, carrying a silent vow to never make that mistake again. For 9 years, Charlotte surrounded herself with brilliant, highly polished people. Top-tier engineers, lawyers, strategists, and analysts. But she only chose them for their predictable loyalty and flashy credentials. They were content staying inside the neat boxes she managed. Yet Mason, quiet and unassuming, worked entirely outside those walls. He was neither intimidated by her massive wealth nor dazzled by it. He was just there, quietly fixing a critical issue because he knew the heavy truth. The noisy, flashy signing event took place inside the lavish Meridian Dynamics tower on 6th Avenue. 22 stories high, with floor-to-ceiling glass on 2 sides. You have seen these rooms built purely for show, screaming victory before any real substance is tested. 112 people gathered by 11:45, mostly auto executives, wealthy institutional investors and technology press reporters. 2 powerful congressmen leading the nation's transportation infrastructure committees, plus several sharp industry analysts who had published endless pages debating exactly whether Meridian's flashy new system was truly ready for commercial rollout. Jason Hunter strolled in at 11:15. He gave Charlotte a practiced, empty smile and handshake, projecting fake admiration and total confidence in the outcome. She matched his hollow warmth, offering a polite smile while keeping her secrets hidden. Notice this with me. Charlotte made one very telling schedule adjustment. She took the battered Aston Martin DB5. Gerald brought the Bentley. Mason quietly parked the unassuming DB5 in the gloomy basement dock. It's secretly linked to the tower's network through a hardwired port. Her IT manager, one of 3 true allies she trusted after that morning's heavy, ugly truths, had quietly rigged, disguised as a standard infrastructure check. A handful of people on the sidewalk. They judged the battered car, making quick, dismissive remarks the way city people mock things that lack a noisy, obvious shine. The major demonstration was set to begin at 12:15. Charlotte's chief engineer, a highly composed expert named Dr. Patricia Solis, ran the pre-show presentation with sharp, quiet precision. She guided the wealthy crowd through the complex city navigation test architecture, the crucial safety verification protocols, and the flashy data metrics they would watch on the big screens during the live run. The suited crowd looked attentive and highly optimistic. 3 major automotive partners had already used their legal teams to signal they were completely ready to sign. Assuming no hidden flaws ruined the shiny demonstration. Jason Hunter sat nearby, wearing a carefully masked expression of polite, empty interest. At 12:17, the live feed lit up all 6 massive overhead screens. The sleek autonomous vehicle, a heavily modified sedan packed with sensors and running their exclusive guidance software. It began navigating a pristine simulated grid, beaming the video straight from New Jersey into that wealthy, expectant conference room. For 90 seconds it looked perfect on the surface, flawless lane discipline. It yielded smoothly at the polished intersections, showing sharp, accurate responses to fake crosswalk pedestrians. The room, blind to reality, relaxed into easy approval. Watch closely. At 12:19 and 40 seconds, everything changed under the hood. The vehicle blew past a designated stop without even tapping the brakes. It misjudged a stationary obstacle, veering wildly before making a clumsy correction. It ignored every single override command from the control room for 11 agonizing seconds, completely out of control, hurtling at 32 miles per hour right through the simulated neighborhood. Overhead, the massive monitors lit up with endless streams of red warnings. Silence filled the room. We all know that heavy quiet right before a career-ending disaster. Dr. Solis sat rigid at the console, her face masked in a desperate, silent panic. Her hands blurred over the keyboard, but none of her commands could stop the glitch. Jason Hunter allowed himself exactly 2 seconds of manufactured concern before settling his polished features right back into that smug expression of a man who always called this tech useless and now had his proof. But down below, the quiet, overlooked Mason was already working. The very instant a strange signal bled into the vehicle's navigation feed. Fully 48 seconds before anyone upstairs noticed a thing. His unassuming DB5 system flagged the digital threat, and Mason deployed a custom defense protocol he had spent 3 hours quietly perfecting for this exact network. His modest hardware sent a targeted jamming wave directly over the frequency Hunter's loud team used to feed their malicious code. The hostile transmission went dead instantly. The vehicle's native software regained control, but a much bigger play was unfolding in the shadows. Mason's unassuming dusty machine had silently logged every single line of code, recording timestamps and sealing the data with airtight cryptographic proof, before sending the complete file and its origin directly to the 6 massive screens overlooking the stunned boardroom. Suddenly, the red warning screens cleared. A crisp, undeniable diagram appeared, tracing the entire cyber attack step by step. It detailed the breach point, the malicious payload, and the specific target inside Meridian. Most importantly, the origin of the hack was verified and entirely indisputable. The rogue server traced back to Helios, registered directly to the immaculate corporate account of Jason Hunter himself. The executives stared in dead silence for 3 seconds. Then complete and unfiltered chaos erupted. A director bolted upright, while a politician's aide frantically began dialing their phone. Hunter's high-priced attorneys were already quietly slipping toward the exit. Hunter sat frozen in the 3rd row, and for the first time since anyone had heard his famous name. His polished million-dollar face could not hide the truth anymore. He looked like a man watching his proud, arrogant empire get dismantled by a quiet genius in under 60 seconds. Up front, Charlotte remained silent. We know the truth. Real power rarely needs a tailored suit to make an impact. Dr. Solis announced from her console that the vehicle was operating flawlessly once more. Their unassuming, robust system had not committed a single error, and the undeniable proof displayed on the screens detailed a major corporate attack, completely neutralized and logged by a quiet, hidden master. She did not even look back at Hunter's expensive suit. Honestly, she did not need to. The fallout from that flashy demonstration was swift, cold, and calculated. Official statements were released, and legal actions began. The loud, flashy corporate partners signed their papers and left. But Jason Hunter, he had already vanished before police arrived. He slipped away quietly. You and I know real danger is never flashy, it just plans for exits. By the time Charlotte's expensive security reached the lobby, he had vanished. His flashy, well-dressed associates were suddenly very eager to cooperate. The tough act drops quickly when they realize how bad things are. And what they confessed to the authorities during the next 2 hours only proved what quiet Mason had already figured out. But Hunter was a ghost, hiding assets across 3 different jurisdictions. He knew this polished, expensive afternoon might end up looking very ugly. Charlotte, the CEO, received a call from security at 2:47, confirming Hunter had not run to his flashy house or office. Instead, he was last seen in an unremarkable car heading uptown. The second call, that was from Quiet Mason. He was down in the loading dock, idling his old car. He told her to get down there right away, ordering the CEO to leave her expensive phone behind. She knew never to doubt him. She abandoned the phone. They hit the West Side Highway in 15 flat. That old car slipped through the afternoon traffic, wearing the perfect disguise of a faded machine in a city where nobody notices forgotten cars. You see, Mason quietly tracked Hunter's signal using a hidden relay his device was blindly feeding straight back into the counterintelligence grid. Mason calmly explained it was a hidden flaw in the flashy tech Hunter relied on. A secret exploit Mason kept hidden for years, waiting for the perfect moment. Mason always possessed that deep, quiet patience. 6 minutes past the Lincoln Tunnel, their tail arrived. Let us look closer. A dark, menacing SUV followed, keeping a distance that looked coldly professional. Mason spotted the threat long before the CEO noticed a thing. She only knew because his grip shifted on the worn steering wheel, finally learning to read his quiet, calm preparation instead of seeing nervous tension. He never told her to panic. He just warned her to grab that cheap handle and keep her expensive shoes flat on the floor. What happens next is not a loud Hollywood chase. Watch this with me. No running red lights or terrified pedestrians scattering. It was cold, calculated, and executed with absolute precision. Mason triggered a thermal mist from the hidden vents of his ordinary old car. A quiet fog that blinded their high-tech sensors, creating a thick smokescreen at 40 meters. He veered onto the Cross Bronx ramp without even using a blinker. Deep inside the dark tunnel, where the city's flashy tracking grids could not find them, he activated the humble car's secret signal jammer. A short pulse that fried all tracking signals within a 12-meter radius, effectively making the humble DB5 vanish entirely from any tracking network trying to find its signature. That expensive SUV burst through the fog in the completely wrong lane. By the time they finally corrected their course, the unassuming car was 3 turns away, quietly watching the pursuers from a parallel street. The CEO finally released the breath she had been holding for 45 long seconds. Mason noted Hunter's men looked professional, but they had deeply underestimated a quiet, ordinary car. That kept Hunter's crew constantly playing catch-up, reacting to our steps rather than anticipating our next moves. Mason told me that was our biggest advantage, and we had to use it before Hunter saw his mistake and took back control. Hunter sent that hit squad for a reason, Mason explained. Not to eliminate us, not yet anyway, but to find something. He knew about this classic DB5 and the secret prototype project from 12 years ago. And he knew it was gone, believing for years that it was either turned to scrap or locked in some unreachable vault. Seeing this rusty relic wreck his year of planning in under 60 seconds blew his assumptions apart. Hunter was not fleeing the police just yet. He was racing to destroy something else before the law caught up with him. I sat quietly in the passenger seat of that battered gray Aston Martin, driving through the Bronx on a clear October afternoon, thinking of the arrogant version of myself who had stepped out of my Bentley that morning, handing a check to a man I instantly dismissed. I thought about the simple, harmless man I had invented in my head, the cheap car, his faded jacket, that little girl waiting on the steps. And I realized with painful clarity that it was deeply embarrassing how wrong I had been about absolutely everything. Not because those fast assumptions were unusual, but because they were the exact mental shortcuts I built my whole career on. Quick choices, easy labels, fast action. You and I know they work in the boardroom. But I was operating in the completely wrong world for a very long time. I learned about Mason's late wife not from him but from Patricia Solis. She remained completely quiet during all the afternoon's chaos, until she cornered me alone in the hallway outside the legal room at 4:15. Patricia spent 5 years at Meridian, coming from a deep defense contractor background I found highly useful without ever asking about details. Patricia explained, keeping her voice low and direct, that she recognized Mason's name from a technical review board she sat on 8 years ago. A covert panel assembled to investigate safety failures in a classified vehicle program. She confessed she had no idea the man was still operating, and she expressed deep regret for what had happened to his wife. The details were incredibly sparse, the way classified government files usually are. Just a basic summary stripped of substance, the what, without the why. The deadly crash occurred on a highway just outside Richmond, Virginia. The vehicle suffered a sudden guidance system failure, a crash that, knowing what I now understand about Jason Hunter and his ruthless methods, looked exactly like murder. The formal investigation blamed the crash on a faulty factory steering component. The supplier paid a quiet settlement, and the case was closed forever. Mason was just 300 meters away when the crash happened. He received the devastating call during a debriefing and was immediately ordered by the legal team within 24 hours to stay completely silent to anyone outside official channels. I stood frozen in that quiet hallway, letting the heavy truth sink in. I pictured Mason carrying that quiet burden. You truly can never judge appearances. Real power never boasts, no wasted energy, just quiet control. Charlotte pictured his young daughter sitting quietly on those concrete steps, reading her screen, seemingly just a kid but carrying a heavy, silent focus. Look closely and you see a girl taught to survive in silence, unfazed when the world ignores her. She saw Mason differently now, 7 years crafting a massive secret alone, self-funded, while posing as an ordinary, struggling dad. His hidden genius. His immense patience, working toward a massive goal he never felt forced to justify to anyone else. She started her morning controlling $1.4 billion in deals, foolishly believing a designer suit gave her ultimate power. She used to think she could buy her way into any room. But she had entirely underestimated the strength of quiet men. Trailing his ordinary car, she asked what their flashy rival Hunter was desperately trying to uncover. He spoke of an old factory, rotting silently in the industrial badlands north of the Harlem River. A forgotten facility once owned by a massive consortium 12 years ago. It quietly changed owners twice after their grand project collapsed. Today it hides in plain sight behind a shell company. Peel back the corporate lies, and you will find a hidden fund controlled by their flashy rival, Hunter. Charlotte wondered what deep secret was buried there. Mason whispered that it housed the ultimate proof of their systematic corporate sabotage. No cheap copies or watered-down fakes. The original truth. Hunter hid it for 12 years, not to use it daily, but because that buried leverage would eventually give him the key. Absolute silent control over someone desperate to bury the truth. She asked why an intelligent man like Mason played the long game. He explained that moving early meant playing the villain. He would have faced them alone with no solid witnesses or official backing. He lacked the framing to expose the entire dark conspiracy rather than letting their spun lies paint him as guilty. He understood how the world punishes those who expose hidden sins before people are ready to see past the facade. But tonight, everything changes. Tonight, they had concrete proof, powerful allies, and an unbroken chain of legal custody. And a dark corporate conspiracy already resting in the hands of federal authorities. Seizing this hidden archive tonight meant finishing this war once and for all. You and I would probably drive past this ruin and see only garbage. A barely standing eyesore masking the immense, priceless treasure locked deep inside. A decaying 40,000 square foot warehouse hiding in plain sight. Lost behind a cheap wire fence in a grim industrial area that greedy developers dismissed as worthless trash. The old metal gate was locked. Yet the industrial padlocks had been secretly changed over the last 18 months. Brand new steel securing rusted chains. That quiet detail told Mason everything about the secrets hidden within. He killed his old car's engine 3 blocks away, coasting silently into the dark near a broken street lamp. This seemingly quiet father spent 4 minutes running advanced heat scans and passive sweeps, charting wireless networks and tracking guard movements without uttering a single sound. In a low whisper, he warned her of 4 armed men inside, 2 watching the pitch-black northeast corner, and 2 more flanking the server room, the ultimate secret buried behind heavy protection. Hunter was inside. The thermal scan made him look like any ordinary worker punching the clock. Without hesitation, they slipped through a battered, worthless-looking loading dock on the south side. Mason bypassed a rusted mechanical override panel he knew by heart. He had kept those dusty secret blueprints for a moment exactly like this. The air inside reeked of cheap concrete dust and stale machine oil. The atmosphere was freezing and dead, typical of giant warehouses closed to the world. A few cheap fluorescent lights barely worked. They cast harsh strips of pale light across the concrete, swallowed by deep shadow. They kept quietly to those shadows. Mason moved confidently without checking a screen. Charlotte realized this was not his first time here. It had been years, but the layout was deeply etched into his mind forever. They finally cornered Hunter in the quiet server room. He stood at a terminal of ancient dusty hardware. 12 years ago it was premium, but now it looked completely worthless. The massive server stacks surrounding him formed the original project framework. Heavy physical servers, nothing was virtual. You and I know true power is quiet. This data was far too dangerous to ever touch the internet. Hunter heard them step inside, turned around, and did not even flinch. He just stared back at Mason with the smug, arrogant look of a man who had expected this confrontation for a very long time. He believed he held all the power, judging by what he saw. Smiling, he said he wondered how long it would take Mason to finally show up. He dismissed the afternoon as a minor fender bender on the way to a massive payout. He claimed those ancient servers behind him held enough wealth to rebuild his entire empire. To start completely fresh using fake names and wealthier partners. And Mason was welcome to complain to absolutely anyone who cared. Because the undeniable proof of what had happened 12 years ago was locked in a format only Hunter's unique key could decrypt. One wrong move and the fragile hardware would instantly erase every asset. He spoke with absolute arrogance because that was exactly how he built it. For 12 years his quiet defenses had been bulletproof. Mason remained silent. Then he smirked and told Hunter he was protecting the wrong asset. Hunter's smug expression faded not to panic, but to the rapid recalculation of an arrogant man realizing the quiet old asset he ignored was about to utterly bankrupt him. Mason tapped the worn interior panel of his DB5's control module. It looked like worthless scrap on his shoulder, but suddenly the room's display screens, all 6 massive monitors lining the walls, woke up and began flashing data. Not the secret files Hunter was fiercely protecting. It was the evidence Mason had quietly gathered for 12 years, the communication logs, the illegal equipment receipts, the hidden system access timestamps, the strange signal glitches from the Virginia crash, the dirty financial transfers, the shell company trails, all verified, dated, and already actively transmitting. That quiet, unremarkable DB5 been uploading through an encrypted satellite relay since they breached the building. You see, looks deceive. This massive archive was not downloading to a local drive. It was streaming directly into the hands of 3 federal agencies. The slick, polished lawyers from the afternoon's flashy signing were finally staring at the quiet, heavy truth +4. Those investigative reporters Mason had quietly kept in his address book for 11 years. Hunter stared at the flashing screens, underestimating the quiet man once again. He glanced toward the doorway, stunned to find Charlotte standing right there. He lunged for the physical server wipe switch, a brute force override meant to smash through any digital defense. But Mason's quiet brilliance had already anticipated this. And that unassuming DB5 fired an electromagnetic pulse straight through the control system, triggering a massive power spike in the hidden wiring that tripped the main circuit breaker right before Hunter could even touch that switch. The whole room went pitch black for 2 long seconds. When the emergency lights finally flickered on, powered by a hidden backup circuit, Hunter stood frozen, the switch untouched. That silent, invisible data transfer was already completely finished. Charlotte captured every single word spoken, caught by the tiny microphone hidden inside Mason's ordinary device. That hidden audio recording was now permanently locked deep inside the archive. Hunter's own voice, openly confessing the ugly truth behind his polished data. It was all heading to people who would tear down his shiny facade by tomorrow morning. Defeated, Hunter sank into the terminal chair, his once arrogant voice completely silenced. Federal agents swarmed the flashy corporate facility just 41 minutes later. Outside, Mason simply waited by his worn-out classic car, never needing to step back inside. Let's fast forward 3 weeks past that fateful night, shall we? Charlotte faced her powerful board of directors, delivering a truth that shattered their comfortable illusions, stripping away the corporate polish to reveal nothing but raw, honest reality. She exposed the secret signing disaster and the incredible tech hidden within her ruined car. the massive, invisible flaws buried deep inside her own company's security systems, and which seemingly loyal board members had spent 18 months quietly betraying them. Two of those compromised executives walked out before the meeting even ended. The third executive was handed straight over to corporate lawyers. She absolutely refused to hide the ugly reality behind pretty words. She laid out the bare truth, letting the shock settle, then called Mason that next Monday. He answered on the third ring. "You and I see a simple dad, his daughter asking about school nearby." Charlotte told him she needed to apologize sincerely, and this time she did. Not with the superficial gloss of some quick corporate deal, but with the heavy honesty of someone admitting they were completely wrong. She confessed she had only seen his rugged exterior back on 48th Street, completely blind to the brilliant mind right in front of her. Judging a quiet man by his worn cover almost cost her everything. He quietly told her he appreciated the words. He didn't brush it off just to be polite. Real harm was done, and he never hid behind fake pleasantries. Then she made her real offer. Her massive empire wanted to license the brilliant, hidden security architecture Mason had built, under his exact terms, placing his rightful name directly on the patent, requiring his personal approval before any launch, and a payout reflecting the true, staggering worth of his mind, ignoring the scruffy, ordinary way he appeared to a superficial world. She named a massive fortune. He just listened in perfect silence. Finally, he simply murmured that he would think it over. 3 days later, he countered, "You see, for men like Mason, value isn't about money. Let's look closer." He only agreed to a quiet consulting deal. No loud corporate buyouts, no flashy licensing deals. His terms were completely non-negotiable. He kept total control, restricting his genius software strictly to saving lives instead of surveillance. He built this massive system solely to shield ordinary people. That was the only way he would ever let his life's work touch the world. Charlotte agreed instantly, with no arguments. For 9 years she had never signed a deal without manipulating it, yet here her ruthless instincts fell silent. Glimpsing the vast truth behind his quiet life completely rewired her internal compass. Over the next months, her tech firm changed in quiet, subtle ways that made no noise on the outside, but you and I know everyone felt the impact. Charlotte quietly rebuilt her entire tech oversight board. She purged the greedy executives who cared only for superficial, short-term financial gains, replacing them with brilliant engineers who truly understood the value of his quiet work. She launched a transparent security audit, publishing the raw truth for everyone to see. She flatly turned down massive buyouts. These huge offers came from the same corrupt networks she once used to build her empire. Drawing a hard line, she made the tech world respect the strict ethics guarding this system. Mason himself never sought the spotlight. He quietly guided only 3 critical projects over the next year, done entirely and strictly on his terms. Slipping away silently when finished, he refused the hollow praise that turns a quiet genius into a commercial brand. That spring, his daughter won her school science fair. She built a brilliant project exploring electromagnetic shielding for everyday family cars. He sat quietly on a simple folding chair in the back of the school gym, watching her explain her complex work to the judges with that same calm focus she had inherited from him. He was content, hidden away in the exact place he belonged. That vintage Aston Martin DB5 remained parked outside his modest 48th Street home. Its faded exterior looked perfectly ordinary, concealing the sheer power sleeping under the hood. Charlotte cruised past it one quiet morning, in her spotless sedan, running 10 minutes early for a corporate meeting. Old habits of a driven life never truly fade. She slowed her car slightly as she passed. The dusty paint briefly caught the early sun, shining for just a split second like a rare masterpiece parked in plain view, waiting for someone patient enough to see past the dust. Most people never look closer. And that, Charlotte finally realized, was the entire point. You and I know that the most profound things never seek attention. They run silently, holding their vast weight, waiting for the rare eyes that are finally ready to see what really matters.